In this video, we're going to scrape this text from this website, automated.pythonanywhere.com. So that's the current web page, is the home page, and we will be using Selenium for this. So Selenium is a Python library, a third-party Python library that is used to automate browser actions. That includes things like clicking on a link and then on the next page doing something else, such as copying some text, or perhaps you want to log in. You're going to learn that too in the next videos. So you can write a Python script to log into these websites, enter the username and password. Of course, everything is automated. Selenium and Python will do that through that Python script, and then do something else on the next web page after the login, and so on. But for this particular video, we're going to do something simple. So just scrape this text with Selenium. So which means that we're going to get that text and load it in our Python program and maybe print it out, or you can do whatever you want then with that text. So let's go to REPL, and here you can see that I have created an empty folder for this section, so browser automation and web scraping, and then I'm going to create a new REPL in this folder using Python, and let's name it scrape simple text with Selenium. Create a REPL, and so this is our empty REPL. It's a good idea to install Selenium beforehand. Selenium, like that. Press the plus icon and wait until the installation completes. Sometimes though the installation can hang, so you'll see that these messages will not disappear. In that case, you might want to reload the browser and see here if Selenium has been installed, if it's listed here. If not, try again until it is installed. And always, you can also just import Selenium here, and when you run the script, it will install automatically. So you have these two options: use the packages menu or directly import. My installation was completed, so now I can import Selenium in main.py. But what I'll do is I'll just import from Selenium the WebDriver. WebDriver is basically a tool which allows us to instruct the behavior of the web browser. So the WebDriver makes everything possible, and we have access to that WebDriver from Python through Selenium. And the first logical thing to do is to create a driver variable and use WebDriver. Actually, we don't use the WebDriver, we use the Chrome class of the WebDriver. Normally, Chrome, this class, expects the executable path of a Chrome driver, which you can download and install from the web. So that's the Chrome, the driver for the Google Chrome web browser. Every web browser will have a different driver. However, here on REPL, you don't have to provide that path to an executable because it's automatically configured, which makes our programming job easier, so we don't have to go through downloads and configuration actions. So just like that. And while this is the minimum thing you can do to configure your driver, there are other things, other options that you add to your driver. So this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create some options using WebDriver.Chrome options. So this can be an empty class call. So we call the class, but no need to provide any arguments. So this is an instance of this. Now it's the Chrome options object, and in that options we add arguments. These are basically flags, And these are what I was referring as the options. The first flag we want to add is disable info bars. So disable -info bars. What this will do is, on a browser sometimes we have these bars here which display some information such as the memory is low or things like that. Now those bars may interfere with the script taking actions on the browser. So the script may want to click somewhere, but that pop-up, that info bar, could confuse the cursor and so on. So we add that to disable them. Other options that is good to have is to add argument. The next one is start maximized. So that will start the browser as maximized. That's also a good thing because some web pages, for example, may change the content when you resize, when you make them smaller. So we want to access the maximized version of the browser. Another one is disable dev shm usage. This particular option is to avoid some issues that occur when you interact with a browser on a Linux computer, and this here on REPL is a Linux machine, so it's good to have that to avoid some particular issues. The next one is, let me be consistent here with the quotes, just for consistency. And next, no sandbox. Now browsers for security, they use something called sandboxing, and if we want our program, our script, to have greater privileges on that particular web page that the script is going to access and scrape, we want to add this option so that sandboxing is disabled. Next, we have some experimental options which are new, and we have exclude switches, and in a list comes enable automation. Now this option and another one that I'm going to add here, so these experimental options are options that help Selenium to avoid detection from the browser. So some browsers, web pages, they don't like scripts, so we enable our scripts to access those browsers. So the other one is, not actually, it's an add argument option, it's not an experimental one. So this is disable blink features equal to automation controlled. And that's it. So these are the options. Set options to make browsing easier. Right. And then we need to provide that options variable in here. So options now has all these arguments. This variable contains all those arguments. Now, what I would prefer to do here is to just select all these, indent them with a tab, and then put them inside a function, which I would like to name getDriver. So I'm trying to keep things organized here. So this function is responsible to create a driver and return that driver. That's good, however, the driver is currently empty, it's not connected to a web page. So we want to connect it to a web page just inside the function. So driver.get, and here this gets the URL. So the URL is this web page, right? We said that we want to scrape this text, and that text is in this web page. Therefore, we provide that web page as a string in here. So it starts with HTTP and so on. Now we return the driver for this particular web page. And then I'd like to create another function. So let's name this main. And here I'm going to get the driver from get driver. So we call that function. Therefore, this variable now holds this driver because that function returns that, so it makes sense. And with that driver, now we extract an element from that driver. So driver.find element by xpath, which is down here. Yes. And this gets the xpath as a string. What is the xpath? Well, let's find that out. So we want the xpath of this text, right? Therefore, we select somewhere over here and go to inspect element. You may need to enable your browser developer options if this inspect element options doesn't show up. So you have to maybe Google something how to show inspect menu on your particular browser, which could be Firefox, Chrome, or Safari, etc. Anyway, so a web page is made of HTML elements. For example, this h1 element that you see here, this creates this text. H1 means the text is quite big, the font. And if I click over here, you see that the text is inside these h1 tags. So you see h1 here, h/h1 here. So these tags, HTML tags, hold this text. And if I click over this tag and I go to copy and I go to xpath, I just copied the xpath of that text. And if I paste it there, you see we're going to get this string. So that's what I copied from there. Now, let's return this element and see what it is made of, how it looks like. And therefore, I'm going to print the call of the main function. So I'm calling main here, right? Print main with a print to print out that element and to run. It seems we have an error, so let's look at it. Expected string bytes or path like object, not options. So the error started in line 22 when we called the function, and it chains back to line 18 when we get the driver, which goes back to line 13 options, and that's where the root of the error is in our script. Then we have library errors here. So line 13 is this options. So it seems that options is actually a positional argument, so we have to mention its name, options equals to options. So the name of the argument and the variable, this one here. Right, so let's run again. And this is the output. So that's the element, this one. And we also have a warning, deprecation warning, which means this find element by, so this method has been deprecated, which means it's a good idea to remove it, because in later versions of Selenium it's going to be removed as a method. So we can take measures now and use what this suggests, find element. So let's do find element, which gets these two arguments, by and value. So I think without even looking at the documentation of this value, I think what they want us to do is say by xpath. So we declare that we are accessing this element using the xpath options and not other options, such as find element by tags or by class, etc. So by xpath is good, and this would be a value. So yeah, that should do it. Run again. And here is a browser also. It's being accessed. We don't see anything now because this is just a simple operation. So that's the element, right? And to get the actual text, you can just do element.text here in the return and run. Yeah, here is the text. So that one in there. And this concludes this video. So you learn how to set up Selenium. It was a long one, probably because we have to configure a lot of options, but the good news is that you're going to reuse this function just as it is in future videos of this section. So I'll talk to you in the next video. See you.